Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. Welcome back to Jamie Photography. What we're going to do for you today is we're going to take this traditional shot of Big Ben and the Houses of Parliament and Westminster Bridge in London over the River Thames. And we're going to turn it into a black and white, a bit of drama, and bring it alive a little bit. If you want to follow along, the raw file is in the link below. Feel free to download that and follow along. All I ask is that you respect my copyright. If you do wish to share your version of this image on social media, please give reference to myself, Jamie Mathlin. That would be most appreciated. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, I'd love you to join me on my adventure on YouTube. We've finally passed the 1,000 subscribers, which is great news. And we're doing very well. Get a lot of very positive comments, so feel free to chat with me, like the video if you like the video. So let's get started. So this is straight from camera. As you can see, it's 1/250th of a second at f10 ISO 400, and so it's pretty well freeze frame. It's a bright day, and we really pushed the limits with the highlights here. So we're going to try to recover the highlights. And as I say, turn it into a black and white. So the first thing I'm going to do is exactly that. Go to the highlights here, just bring that down, see if we've got something workable up there. I think I might even drop down the exposure slightly, and yes, we've got the clouds, which is lovely. So we should be able to work with that. I'm just going to open the shadows all the way up as well, and just bring those highlights down just a little bit more to balance it off. There we go. So that looks pretty good. I do want to sort out the perspective to make sure we've got Queen Elizabeth Tower, which holds the bell of Big Ben, and I want to make sure the bridge is also got the right perspective as well. So I'm going to go down to transform on the right here. I'm going to click auto just to see if it works, and that's pretty good. I'm just going to check it with guided as well. So I'm going to take the top of the light there using the zoom in and just go down to the relevant point on that pillar, and I'm going to take the top of Queen Elizabeth Tower, and I'm just going to come down to the bottom there, and hopefully that works as well. So take the lines off for a second, just see. It's pretty good, but I think I'm going to go with the auto. So next things to do is we've got to build some contrast into this image. Now you might think, well, the best thing to do is just go straight to contrast here and just bring the contrast up, and that does give you really strong lines, and gives you a good opportunity to go black and white. And we could just click black and white now if we wanted to, and then think, okay, yeah, that's a good starting point. But I find, clicking back to color there, that if we bring up too much contrast, it tends to bring sort of a saturation of the blend between the darks and the lights, and it can make it look a bit aggressive. It can make it look a very almost false image. So you have to be very careful with contrast when you bring it up. I mean, we could come up to +5, adding a little bit more in there, but probably the best thing to do is to darken the scene and relight the scene, just to try to get the contrast where we want it, the light areas and the dark areas. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to bring down the exposure to -2, so quite a bit darker. But you see how these clouds come alive when you bring that down, and that's something that we want to try to use in this image. Also, we probably want to try and darken this water area over here a little bit, just to try and bring that down. And I can do that by going to masks, taking a linear gradient and bringing a linear gradient up from the bottom as such. And I can just bring down the exposure there, not too much, about there. Just going to bring the highlights down just a little bit as well, just to darken that corner off. And maybe I want to darken it even more at the bottom there, so I'm going to right click, duplicate the mask, and I'm just going to bring that down the bottom. So we can just move that down to there. Okay, I'm also going to take another mask, create another mask, take another linear gradient and just bring it down from the top up there. I'm just going to add a little bit more blue to that, just a little bit. I'm just going to drop the the exposure down. Remove the highlights a little bit, not too much. That's looking pretty good. I'm just going to bring that down just a little bit further. And I don't want to darken the Queen Elizabeth Tower, and I don't want to darken the bridge here. So I'm going to subtract the sky, and then I'm going to click the inverse of the sky. So effectively, it keeps this area illuminated. That looks better. I think I might just duplicate that mask and just add one more, just more so up in that top corner there, and just darken that a little bit more as well. Not too much on the blue this time. There we go. That's good. So we've got this sort of closure coming from the bottom left and the top right. So I'm also going to probably brighten up this bridge a little bit here, around here. So I'm going to create a new mask. I'm going to go for color range, and I'm going to select the bridge here with the eyedropper. Okay, and I'm just going to bring that refine down, so it's really just picking up the bridge. I'm going to hold down the shift key and click again on the color there, and I think we've got most of that area. Maybe one more here. There we go. So that's sort of the outer edge of the bridge. Now you've got all this other area here which you don't necessarily want, so we can subtract a brush. We can put the flow at 100% and the feather at 0, and we can just sort of pick off these areas that we don't want to be illuminated. Make my brush bigger by using the square brackets to the left of the return key, and I'm just going to come in there and just pick up those areas. I don't want the mask on, so I'm just going to turn off the auto mask there, just so I can completely get rid of everything. That's it. Look, smaller brush there, just to take it off the roof and the windows there. That's perfect. And I might take it off the lanterns as well. I don't really want the lanterns illuminated. There we go. Perfect. So just going to come there on that part of the bridge as well. So that's got rid of it. So the only area, as you can see, if I hover over the mask there, you can see it's that's the area that I used the brush around. There's the whole color range, and there's the mask. It's just the front of the bridge. So we can now do things specifically with that area. So one of the things I want to do is to increase the greenness of the bridge. So I'm going to bring the tint down. There we go. Now, because we're going black and white, I want a lot of color contrast. Really, really important that we have a lot of color contrast. So I'm really going to push that to get some deep colors in there. I'm also going to take the another mask here, and I'm going to take the, oh sorry, apologies, before I move away from the previous mask, this one, just going to add in some clarity, which really makes it pop, and a little bit of texture, and I'm just going to add a bit of contrast to that as well, just to really make that work well. That's good. I'm going to take new mask. I'm going to go to color range again, and this time I'm going to select the Houses of Parliament over there. I'm going to refine that by bringing that down. There we go. I'm just going to take another color sample by holding down the shift key and adding, just so we've got those colors there. That works. I'm then going to subtract a brush. Auto mask is off, feather is 0, flow is 100, and I'm just going to click once there, hold down the shift key and click again here. I don't want the bridge this time, so I'm just going to come back over here, make my brush bigger, take out the water, take out the areas of the bridge that's illuminated by that, and all we're left with is the Houses of Parliament. So this needs to be more orange in colour. So what we can do is we can either just increase the saturation, there we go, add a bit more temp to it, like that. Now remember, we're going black and white, so we want a lot of color contrast. That's good. Okie dokie. So with the sky, one of the things I think we need to do is boost the clarity and boost the contrast. So we can create another mask. We can select the sky. There we go. And what we can do is we can add contrast to the sky. That's quite good. Quite a lot there, as you can see, 65. I'm also going to throw quite a bit of clarity at the sky as well. Here we go. That looks pretty crazy. Now, if you remember when we started, the sky was almost completely blown out. So so it works well to add these things later. So I'm just going to back that contrast off just a little bit, because if you look at the side of the tower, you'll just see a little halo starting to appear, and that comes about by having a bit too much contrast. So I'm just going to put that in there. That's good. Yep, happy with that. So I just want to boost these clouds a little bit more. So what I'm going to do is going to create another mask, this time with a brush, and I'm going to turn on auto mask this time. I'm going to bring the feather up to 100, bring the flow down to 40. I'm going to boost the exposure, boost the highlights, and I'm going to boost the clarity. And what I'm going to do with the smallest brush is just pick up on the lighter part of the clouds here. And effectively what we'll end up doing is creating a very bright edge to the clouds. It will look quite spectacular when we go black and white. So just going to come in through there as well. Through there. That's it, that's looking good. And I'm going to do the same again, create a mask, take a brush, and this time I'm going to leave the settings as they are, but I'm going to bring the exposure down slightly, a little bit more contrast, and I'm going to add a little bit more clarity again. And this time we're going to pick up on the darker parts of the clouds, the underside of the clouds, if you will. Here we go. Just bringing those up over there. And that gives us this real dodge and burn effect, just to really emphasize the dark areas and the light areas, and it really does make the contrast work really beautifully in the image. So I'm just going to come around there. I think that'll do us. That does well. Okay, so I think we're pretty well ready to go with going black and white with this image. So I'm just going to come out of the masks here. I'm going to go into black and white now. Now we've got quite a bit of color contrast in there, as you can see, but we really still need to do some work to just bring it alive. And the black and whites can really help with this. Now you can auto select the black and whites by holding down the shift key and double clicking the word white. And what will happen, and the same happens for the black, and it will go right up to where it crops. Yeah, that's a little bit too much, but I can also bring the exposure down just a little bit, but that white's just a bit too much. So just trying to balance off the difference between exposure and the blacks. We can also mirror those. If you want to see the impact, you can hold down the Option or Alt key on a Windows machine, and then you can just move it to see. The further you go, the more black you see. So we could add a bit of black in there, and the same with the whites. We could bring the whites up until you see the whites, but we're gonna settle around about there. I'm gonna add some clarity to this shot, not too much. I'm gonna back the textures off just a little bit, because what happens is the lines become very acute and they sort of draw you into the image a bit too much. So I'm not going to go quite as far as that, maybe -10. And you know what? We could even try minus clarity just to soften the image. You see how that works? If you soften the image with minus clarity, what you can do is add a little bit of texture just to bring the edges back in that sort of reverse roll between the textures and the clarity. So that's looking quite good. I'm reasonably happy with that. It still needs a little bit more buzz in the center. So I think what we can do is we can go down to the black and white mixes, which is normally your HSL box, but once you go black and white from color image, you can use these sliders. So I want to emphasize the colors just a little bit more before we do that. So I'm just going to step back to color, I'm going to boost the vibrance. There we go, quite a big handful, plus 40. Okay, and add a little bit more saturation, really bring those colors alive and go back into black and white. All right, and there we go. It's starting to really look like something is working well there. So they're just going to go down to the B&W settings, the black and white mix, and now I can take the different colors individually. So the oranges, for example, you saw that the houses of parliament were orange. I can make that brighter, or I can make that darker now just by moving the orange slider, you see. So I can find somewhere where it works, and I think they're about plus 20. The yellow will have some effect on that as well, and under the bridges as well. So gently with that, I'm going to go plus 30, just as this area here is lit up. The greens, there was a lot of green on the bridge piers here, so we can bring that up, and of course the bridge is green as well if we wanted to, so we can bring that up just a little bit. That works. The blue, well, that was the sky up here, so that's already quite dark, and if I reduce the blues, this whole thing sort of comes down a little bit, and if I go up, it loses all that work we did with the contrast. So I'm just going to go down minus 15. There wasn't a lot of purple in this shot, so if I move to left to right, is literally just a few things on the bridge there, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. The same with the magenta. There's not a great deal going on there with that image. And I think we're pretty well done. The only last thing I would do is go back into create a mask, take a radial gradient, take a nice big radial gradient like this in this shot here, coming right across, so it's sort of brightening up the center of the image, and I'd bring up the exposure a little bit, bring up the contrast a little bit, there, about plus 20, bring the whites down slightly. Yeah, and that's maybe a little bit more on the exposure. I'm going to go plus 5.5. Going to come out of the masks, and then I'm just going to just try and find the balance with the exposure there, and bring up that clarity just a little bit. That works quite well. And then I'm going to go down to the effects slider down here, look for a post-crop vignette. Now either we can do a negative vignette like we normally do, bring that down, open the feathers up, or one of the techniques you can do with black and white is you can do a positive vignette. So it's not good too much, just a little bit, and just feather that out. So you can also do that. It's having too much of an impact down here on the bottom right corner. It's not sort of equal across there. So you can move the midpoint, just move it over to the right a little bit, and you can reduce the roundness of it just to see. It's quite heavy there. So I'm just going to leave that around about there, minus 45, I think. Yeah, and then I think do need to just do a little bit of sharpening in here. Let's zoom in and see how much noise we've got. We're quite close in there at the moment, so you can see we're at 200. There's a little bit of noise. We can use the new technique, the new tool that's in Lightroom, denoise. I can click on that, and it will just have a look at this image, sample it for us. Bring that back down to 50. So it's just having a think, and once it's had a thought, it will. That's the before, and that's the after. Do you see that? That's the before, and that's the after. Incredible tool. Now it's going to take. It says it's going to take 1 minute to do this, so I'm going to click enhance, and it's going to start working on that. Minute's quite a long time for it to do that, but there's a lot to do here in terms of the size of the image. So whilst it's just doing that, we can zoom back out, and we can wait for it to bring that in. Once it's done, what I will like to do is add some sharpening to the image. So just allowing that to finish the denoise. It's quite interesting, I find, with the denoise. I've been using it quite a bit since it was introduced, and some images, even if they're 60 megapixel images, it can do in 10 seconds. Some images even might be as low as 24 megapixels. Some of those can take 2 or 3 minutes to actually calculate. So it's interesting now how the algorithm is working. So if I zoom in there, just let that render that image for us there. We can just see, there we go, look at that, is absolutely perfect. So happy with that. So we'll just add that bit of sharpening I was talking about. So just bring that sharpening up just a little bit. I'm going to come up to 60, so it's really sharp now. And then I just think we just need, there's a little bit more needed in the image, and I think I'm just going to either bring the highlights up just a little bit. No, not going to move the highlights. I'm going to bring the exposure up, and bring the shadows back to about plus 90, and I'm just going to bring the whites back ever so slightly. Now we brought the exposure up, a little bit more contrast, yeah. And I think we've got a finished image. So so where were we? Let's just go back to where we were. We were here. That's where we were. That's where we started, and this is where we went to. So maybe just a little bit too strong over here on the clarity. So we can always just take a brush, create a new mask here, take a brush, put the flow quite low, feather high, and then what we can do is we can undo a little bit of that clarity there, and undo some of that contrast, and then just come back in over here, just take a little bit of that away. Yep. And yeah, it's difficult to know, isn't it, when you're really there, when you're really finished. I'm just going to probably just back that slightly. It's just come out of masks. Just take that back just slightly. That sky still looks amazing. I think that's where I'm going to end up, minus 1.5. Yeah, so there we go. The black and white of Big Ben in Queen Elizabeth Tower at the Houses of Parliament over the River Thames at Westminster Bridge. Black and white with a little bit of depth, and we recovered those highlights. That's the important thing, and we've brought that sky alive. So hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please feel free to like below. Love you to subscribe, and I think for now I'll say bye bye.